Hello there, and welcome to the tour of the Buffalo 128kSU logistics truck, the sixth vehicle in my military utility logistics or transport vehicles series. My name is Wimperman, and I am the chief designer, chief builder, chief architect, and chief dumbass behind the Buffalo logistics truck project. Now, before I take you through the tour, before I start it proper, there is a small bit of important information regarding its power and shields. Like the two vehicles below it in the series, the Banteng and the Bison, this has 6 generators, 2 on by default, and another 2 that come on when you use the shields device group switch. Now, what that means is if you use your keybind to turn your shields on, there won't be enough power to charge the shields and the generators will explode. Now, I will cover that more when we get to the power segment, and for obvious reasons, I will also touch on it again during the defenses segment and the signals segment. And at the end, I will show you, assuming you can't figure it out for yourself, but you probably can, how to fix that if you don't like it, how to change it so that it doesn't do that anymore. Actually, let's come out of that view. I did mean to turn God mode on, just not in the right order. So here is the new vehicle, and if you've seen the tours of the Banteng and the Bison, you'll know that this is very, very similar because I can be a little bit lazy at times. I mean, there are some differences, but generally speaking, it's the same shape. It's just a larger version. So, there isn't really an original vehicle to show you. This is a new build. So the first segment I'm going to talk about is its role and its task equipment. So its role, exactly like the other logistics trucks, is an armed cargo and supplies transport. And to facilitate that task, it has 4 32,000 SU cargo containers, hence the 128 in its name. Let's turn the HUD on, 128K. 4 of those, 4 32s is 128. You could also argue that the thrusters facilitate its task, because without them it would just be sat there stationary. So it needs the thrusters to facilitate logistics transport, otherwise it's just logistics. That's the end of that segment. So the next segment is its propulsion, handling and lift capacity. So starting with its propulsion, around the back as usual, it has 10 large tier 2 thrusters for forward acceleration, 5 on each side, plus a medium tier 2 in each corner. For braking and reverse, it has 8 large tier 2s and the same 2 medium tier 2s. It's just missing the 2 at the top. And for lateral thrust, it has 7, so 1 less, large tier 2 thrusters. 2 at the front, 3 there, 2 at the back. And again, 2 medium tier 2s, 1 in each corner. It has 6 large and 24 small hover engines on by default. Now, with those on, it will lift itself in up to 6G. And now that is dry weight. That's not including ammo or anything in the cargo boxes. Although I still don't know whether that would take into account fuel and O2. It might not, I don't know. But as it is, it will lift that much. It'll lift itself in up to 6G, I should say. As you can see, it has 8 hover boosters for your jumping needs. It also has 6 more large hover engines set to max lift, and with max lift on, it will lift around about 367.1 tons in 4G. Now, when you take the 161 tons of the vehicle weight off of that, it'll lift an additional 206.1 tons. Oh, I'm back on the dark side of the vehicle. I always do that. I do know why, because when I test drive it, I end up parking facing that way. So I always go to the left side of the vehicle, which when I'm facing the other way is over here. Story time with Wimp. So, mobility. I forgot where I was. Mobility, starting with its maneuverability. It will accelerate forwards at 24 meters per second squared. It'll accelerate rearwards at 19, and it'll do sidewaysies at 17 meters per second squared. As for its agility, as usual, the most important is yaw, 21 degrees per second. 9 degrees of pitch and 19 of roll. I don't find those two particularly important on a HV. Now, it does have some RCSs, and those RCSs are turned off by default. But when you turn the RCSs on, it will increase the yaw and the pitch and the roll. I think it's by 2 degrees per second. So 23, 20. Yeah, so do bear in mind that's dry weight. So when you fill it full of crap, I mean, if this goes down to 10, I don't know if it will go up to 12 when you turn the RCSs on. It might only go up to 11, or it might not change at all, because it might be it might change this slightly, but not enough to go from 20. No, what was I talking? 10. It might change it from 10 to like 10.2 or something. But whatever. Oh, handling. Right. Let's give it a quick test drive. So this is another vehicle where it's probably best to have pilot mode on. Now, considering her size, she's not bad. It is sluggish, but again, it's not exactly a small vehicle. Oh, did I? No, I thought I turned off auto braking. Okay, let's park up. There we go, like I said, face the other way. And then I come out this side, you see? That's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is its power, fuel, and air. Now, power. It has 6 large generators. In fact, it's the exact same 6 large generators in basically the exact same place as the Banteng and the Bison trucks below this in the series. And like those, it has 2 that are on by default. So, hang on, let's move sideways a little bit. So you can see it's spinning, and that one's spinning. So if we turn the vehicle off, we can no longer see it spinning because it's fallen out the sky. Oh yeah, and of course the 2 below it is also set to the propulsion, etc. So let's turn that off, and we'll see that only the top ones are now spinning. Now the bottom ones are set to the shields device group toggle. Now, as I said at the beginning, that does mean that without those 2 on, the shields won't have enough power to charge. So if you're going to use the keybind on your keyboard, or you're going to use this switch here under the general column, it will probably go pop. Again, I will explain later on at the end of the video how to fix that if you don't like it. Fuel. Yes, fuel is next. So, oh, no, I want to talk about its power. So, I did some maths using a crapulator. This isn't the maths I'm talking about. That was, you might remember I was figuring out how much additional it would carry in 4G on top of its own weight. So, I did maths, and I calculated that those with all 6 generators on, and taking into account that all of the thrusters are on and being powered, which obviously they won't be at any given moment. At most it will be just over half, because you might be driving forward and strafing. But generally speaking, it won't. Generally speaking, it'll probably just be the forwards. It certainly won't be all of them, because then they'd be firing in all directions all at once, which I'm not sure is even possible. But taking into account all of the thrusters and all of the hover engines, including the max lift ones, and all of the RCSs if they're on, and the hover boosters, and the shield, and all of the turrets that we can see, and the container controllers and all the extensions and the CPU extenders and the air vents, it leaves 779 power units left over from all of the power produced by the 6 generators. Now, I can't remember if I included in that calculation the power used by the fuel tanks, the O2 tanks, the detector, the Wi-Fi, or the hover boosters. This was a couple of days ago now for me that I did the maths for that, and I can't remember if I included them. Now, I didn't include the power for the lights, the motion sensors, and the lever. There's one lever. The O2 stations, the fridges, the docking pads, the LCDs, or any of the doors, shutters, or ramps. Now, the fuel is one each. And there's, how many did I say? Let's look on my notes. Oh, I haven't actually got there. Anyway. All right, well, I'll tell you now. Might as well. There are 22 large fuel tanks feeding the generators. So if there's 22 at 1 power each, that's 22 power units just for them. Now, there are 10 O2 tanks. Now, they require 3, so that'll be 30. There are 2 ventilators, and they're 20 each, but I did include that in the calculation. And there are 2 O2 stations there. Energy in is only 2 for those, so 4. I can't remember, like I said, if I included the detector, but that is only 5. I can't remember if I included the wireless connection, but that's only 10. And next, hover boosters. Where are they? There. And they're only 5 each. There's 8 of them. So 30. So 30 power units. And then I definitely didn't include the lights. Well, they're only... so the spotlights are 5 each, but the little lights are only 1, I believe. Yeah, at the top there. The flares are the same. 1. Armor lockers. There are 2 of those. We'll get to that later, but those are 5 each. And then the fridges, they're not very much. They're 3 each. The docking pads, I think they're about 1 each, aren't they? Yeah. LCDs. Okay, it doesn't actually say there. I think I need to go in it, but I'm pretty sure they're only 1 each as well. Power in 1. And then the doors, likewise, I would need to get them out, but I did check before I started recording. These and those are also only 1 power each, and I forgot to check the ramps, but I'm guessing they are as well. Yeah. Power in 1. So even with the with all of the stuff I excluded from the calculations and the stuff I can't remember if I did include, if I didn't, the 779 should be plenty. I can't imagine it would come to more than half of that. But there is some space inside to expand into. So if you get worried about the generators, you can add one, and we will get to that during the upgrading bit. But don't be alarmed if the power thingy starts to get quite high. I have calculated, and it should be fine. There should be about... I reckon there'll be at least 400 power units left over if everything is on all at once. And in fact, as far as I understand it, these only use power as they extend and retract. I'm pretty sure the doors also only use power as they open and close. So, you know, and the lights, they're not always on, especially if you're driving. So, I think it should be all right. Now, I did also cover the fuel and air. The only thing I didn't mention is that there is only 1 compartment, so there's no real compartmentalization. Now, in case you want to see the little blue shapes like I used to do, but I sort of forgot, they are there to prove that the interior is airtight. Right, that's the end of that lengthy segment. The next segment then is its weapons, defenses, and construction. So, weapons then. It isn't device limit compliant, this vehicle, because it has 12 Gatling turrets. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Now, like all the other logistics trucks, the turrets are set to what I consider to be my anti-personnel configuration. They'll target NPCs, players and predators, and also drones. Defenses, as I've said a couple of times, there is shields. I forgot to mention it has a pentaxid tank in the fuel bit, but it has a pentaxid tank. So it has shields. Now again, if you use the keybind to turn the shields on, it won't have enough power and the generators will explode. So you will need to use the shields device group shortcut to turn on the shields and an additional 2 large generators to power it. Armor. So as usual with the logistics trucks, apart from the thin blocks, which are hardened steel, the front end and the roof is combat steel. Or the roof of the cab, I should say. The blocks around the turrets are combat steel. There's a small amount of combat steel on the sides here. I've actually downgraded that because there's blocks behind it, but there you go. There's did I? Anyway, there's some along the front here protecting the thrusters, but I don't think I did it on the back as well. Most of the rest is hardened steel. As you can see, hardened steel. The back and the underneath is all hardened steel, except for the bits around the hover engines, that's all steel. And some of the decorative nonsense is also just steel. Yeah. And yeah. Yes, that's everything. Cool. Right, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is its resource gathering, production and storage. Like the other logistics trucks, it has no resource gathering. It also has no production, so there's no constructors on board. Storage, as I've already covered, it has a total of 128 KSU cargo containers. That is obviously 4 lots of 32K. Its ammo is 1,875 SU. It then also has 8 large and 5 small cargo boxes, 2 armor lockers, and 2 mini fridges. Right, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment then is its interior layout and any remaining devices. Now, before I go inside, I will show you some of the remaining devices on the outside. Docking pads, 6 of them, in between the clusters of hover engines, I suppose I would call it. The detector ore, like all of them, is under there. So just like the Bison and the Banteng and the Wildebeest, they all have their detector in the same place. The rest of the stuff, if I don't cover it now, it's because it's going to get covered in the signals and shortcuts bit. So, I'm going to start with the cargo bits. Oh yeah, I turned the signals off, of course I did. Because ramps and stuff usually get on my nerves when I'm doing a tour. That ramp, 2 shutters, 2 lights there and there are all on a motion sensor, which is there. You're not even moving. Why are you making noise, Mo? So, I should say as well that this is the same as the other side. It's a mirror image. So we have access to the front left 32K SU cargo container, just there. Some of the extensions for the rear left are visible, but you can't do anything with them. It's just for symmetry that it's like this. 2 small, 1 large cargo box. Again, the other side is the same. The one round the back is basically the same as the Bison. Ramp, 2 shutters, 2 lights on a motion sensor which is in the same place as the one I just showed you. The only difference between this and what I just showed you is obviously both sides has a controller container controller, wrong way round. And instead of 2 smalls and a large, it's 2 large and a small. But other than that, it's the same as the side ones. Right, let's go explore the cab. Oh, I'm sure you've noticed there's a big fuel pod on the side, as there are with all of the other trucks. Now, they are slightly accessible. Okay, access into the cab. Ramp, door, 3 lights. That one, those 2 are on the motion sensor, which is there. As we go in, we have the generator bank on the back wall. As you can see, 2 of them are on by default. I did point it out earlier, but just in case, the shields ones are on the bottom, just in case you wanted to see, and the 2 on the propulsion, etc., are the 2 in the middle. Pentaxid tank, ammo box, and like I said, that's 1875. There's the core. Large cargo box on top of the generators. On each side we have one of the armor lockers, one of the O2 stations, one of the O2 tanks, and one of the ventilators. As you can see, same on the other side. Forward of that we also have large cargo box, a mini fridge, same on the other side. Now normally this would move me on to the shortcuts and signals, but it's not going to be today. But there are a bunch of LCDs in here, heads-up displays. I have my keyboard and a comms panel, the toggleable heads-up displays that show you what keybinds will turn on and off certain things. And there is the big warning that tells you about not turning the shields on with the keybind because everything will explode. Now before I move on to that segment, I'm going to go into God mode and show you the stuff that's inside here. Oh, sorry, right. Motion sensor controls the lights in here. I'm sure you know, but when you get into a seat, the motion sensor doesn't see you anymore. So if you want to leave the lights on when you get into a seat, there is a switch that leaves them on. Yeah. Right, in we go. So we have 8, the other 8, the remaining 8 O2 tanks. Now I'm sure you can see, but I've tried my best to spread things out and put armor in between everything so that if things explode, it shouldn't chain react. So everything here, as far as I know, isn't targetable. So there are the RCSs, the extenders, the Wi-Fi, and the shield. Yeah. Here you can see the back of the container controller and the cargo boxes and some of the extensions. Oh yes, I should have gone underneath, but never mind. And apart from the fuel tanks that are in the side pods, the rest is in here. There are 10 tanks, 2 banks of 5. Again, there's armor in between, and hopefully nothing should chain react. And with those side pods, you should still have some in reserve if things go pop. You should be able to still get away. Now, I forgot to mention, but I mean, we are still in the interior layout, so it's fine. On the bottom are some manual shutters, 2 of them to help protect inside. As you can tell, I haven't bothered painting in here, but if you need some expansion space, there is space in here. And okay, let me just think about if there's any remaining devices. No, I'm pretty sure that's everything. Good. So let's move on now to the next segment, which is its shortcuts and signals. So starting with the device groups shortcuts, as usual, the top one is propulsion, etc. You've seen me use that a couple of times, but it turns on 2 of the generators, all of the thrusters, and what I referred to earlier as the default hover engines. The next one down is max lift. That would turn on the other 6 large hover engines, but no more power, by the way. The RCSs will turn on the RCSs, I'm sure you guessed. The shields will of course turn on the shield itself and 2 large generators to help power it. Again, just in case you're skipping around in the video, I will say it again. If you turn on the shields using the keybind, it won't have enough power, so everything will explode. Please use that. I will talk at the end about how to fix that if you don't like it. And finally is the ventilators, or at least finally for the device groups. Now, for those who haven't seen a tour of mine before, I will cover this, but for those who have, I will try to cover it as quickly as I can. If you flick the oxygen off, you'll see the power left doesn't change, and that's because although it sucks in all the oxygen and doesn't blow out anymore, the ventilator itself is still receiving power. So I give you a ventilator switch, which will save you some power, so you can save some fuel if you're in an atmosphere that is breathable. Ta-da! Moving on to the signals, as usual, the top one is power save. Now, the power save on this vehicle does the Wi-Fi, it does all of the motion sensors and the lever, which will mean all of the ramps and doors will be manual then, I'm sure you guessed. It'll turn off the LCDs in here, as well as the passenger seats. It doesn't turn off the mini fridges, I always say this. So I like to leave them on manual so that you don't accidentally turn them off with power save, thereby ruining any sandwiches you've got in there. Oh, I should also say, and it's something I always forget to say, the devices are grouped into custom device groups. I'm sure you can guess when you look at it, so please do not click the auto group button, especially because some of this relies on those custom device groups. Now, is that the last thing? Is that everything on power save? Yes, I'm pretty sure it is. Pretty sure. Right, so the next one down is the Gatling turrets. That will, of course, turn on and off all of the Gatling turrets. Next 2 down are the lights on the front. There's floodlights and headlights. So the floodlights are these spotlight mode small lights across the top. Yeah. And then the headlights are, of course, the spotlight blocks that are along the bottom. And finally is tail lights. That's the red flares on the back. And I give you that to turn them off if you don't like them. Of course, if you hate them, you can multi-tool them off. Right, so that's the end of that segment. The next and last segment then is its CPU and upgrading. Okay, so the Buffalo is tier 4 CPU. It comes in at just under 71.8 thousand of the 100,000 you are allowed. Just in case you're skipping around in the video and you didn't see them earlier, the core is there at the back of the cab, and the CPU extenders are in between the 2 front 32K containers. Along with the shield and the RCSs and the Wi-Fi. Now there. As for upgrading, so I did go into it during the interior layout bit, but just in case again you're skipping through. On the bottom is 2 manual shutters that leads to a big cavern that is empty. Now, I didn't want to fill this with fuel, not just because it would go boomy, but I didn't think it would really require all of that fuel. And as you can see, it's unpainted so that you don't have to worry about it when you fill in it, or worry about covering up a nice paint job. I mean, not that anything I paint is a nice paint job, but there you go. I mean, so it doesn't have a built-in upgrade path. It just has that big space that's available, and some of the things you could think about putting in here are more fuel, or as I said earlier, maybe another generator if you're worried about the power. I reckon if he was to put another generator in here, just a small one would be fine. Maybe some constructors in here if you wanted to have some production on the go. I don't really think it suits itself well to like a clone chamber. I mean, you could move some of the container extensions up to there and you'd have a spot for one, but I mean that would mean you'd need to paint it and it's a bit of a pain getting out. But it is, I suppose, an option. Okay, now I'm going to show you about the stopping these generators doing this. So if you don't like the fact that the shields switch here has 2 of the generators on it because you keep pressing your keybind and making things explode, and you probably can figure this out yourself, but just in case it needs explaining, you simply take the 2 power generators that are in the power shields device group and you put them in the power main group. Now, as you can see, the shortcut is a device group shortcut. It isn't actually a signal. So just moving them to a different device group will stop that. And that'll mean that they will then turn on and off when you use the keybind for power. I don't know if it's default, but for me that's Y. Or the power switch here. It'll then do them proper. Again, I'm sure it goes without saying, but if you don't like the generators coming on with the power, the propulsion, etc., you can do the same with these generators. Move them into the main one if you don't like it. Right, one last thing to show you is the additional primary colors. If you've seen other MULTVs or other AFHVs of mine, you will know this already, but just in case you haven't seen it before, I include 4 primary colors, these 4 here, and as you can see it comes in this desert sand color. You can also change it to this military green, or this Arctic white, or this dark grey. Okay, there's one last thing to do before I let you go, and again, I don't know why I like doing it. It's just, like I said before, makes me feel like I'm including you in part of the process, even if it is just a very small part, but publish. And by the power of editing, there we go. Right, so thank you very much for taking an interest in the Buffalo 128kSU logistics truck. I hope you get some use out of it, and hopefully I will see you in another video for a different build. So thank you again, and goodbye.